Why You Wouldn't Survive a Day. During the Great Depression, Part 1. Imagine waking up on a cold October morning in 1930. The room is dark and the air feels chilly. Outside your small house, the streets are quiet, but this isn't a peaceful silence. It's the silence of uncertainty. Across America, millions of families are waking up with the same question: how will we survive today? You are John Thompson, a steelworker living in Cleveland, Ohio. You share a modest wooden house with your wife Margaret and your 4 children. Just 1 year ago, life seemed secure. You worked long hours at a steel factory, brought home a steady paycheck, and never worried much about food or rent. Then everything changed. In October 1929, the stock market crashed. At first, most working families didn't think it would affect them. The disaster seemed far away, happening on Wall Street among wealthy investors and businessmen. But the effects spread quickly. Businesses began losing money, factories cut production, banks became cautious, employers stopped hiring and started firing workers. One afternoon in the spring of 1930, your factory manager gathered hundreds of workers together. "We don't have enough work," he said. "We're reducing the workforce." Just like that, your job was gone. Years of hard work ended in a matter of minutes. You walked home carrying a small box of personal belongings, convinced you would find another job soon. But weeks turned into months. Nothing changed. Now every morning begins the same way. Before sunrise, you leave home searching for work. Your shoes are worn, your coat is old, and your savings are nearly gone. As you walk through the city, you notice empty storefronts and closed businesses. Places that once bustled with customers now sit abandoned. A rumor spreads that a warehouse near the railroad tracks is hiring. You hurry there. When you arrive, more than 200 men are already waiting outside. Former factory workers, mechanics, carpenters, office clerks, all hoping for the same thing: a job. Hours pass in the cold. Finally, a supervisor steps outside and announces that only 3 workers are needed. 3 jobs, more than 200 applicants. The lucky few are selected immediately. Everyone else is turned away. You are not chosen. The crowd slowly disperses. No one argues. No one protests. Disappointment has become a part of everyday life. You spend the rest of the day visiting factories and workshops. Every answer is the same: no openings. Not hiring. Try again next month. By evening, you've walked miles without earning a single dollar. Meanwhile, Margaret faces a different challenge at home. She opens the kitchen cupboard and studies what remains: a few potatoes, some flour, a small jar of beans. That's all. Every meal must be carefully planned. Nothing can be wasted. For breakfast, she boils potatoes and cuts thin slices of bread for the children. The portions are small. Nobody asks for more. There isn't any more. Across America, millions of families are living the same reality. Parents skip meals so their children can eat. Savings disappear. Bills pile up. Families sell furniture and personal belongings just to buy food. Later that afternoon, Margaret walks to a nearby church that has begun helping struggling families. A long line stretches around the building. Mothers carrying children, elderly couples, unemployed workers. Everyone waits quietly. Many feel embarrassed. Only a year earlier, they never imagined they would depend on charity. After nearly 2 hours, Margaret receives a small package containing bread, canned vegetables, and a few basic supplies. It isn't much, but it will help the family survive another day. As the sun begins to set, you start the long walk home. The city feels different now. Factories stand silent. Businesses remain closed. Hope seems harder to find with each passing week. You think about your family. You think about tomorrow. Most of all, you wonder how long this can continue. When you finally arrive home, the children run to greet you. You smile, even though you have no good news. That evening, the family gathers around the dinner table. Vegetable soup, bread, potatoes. A simple meal, but enough to keep hunger away for one more night. The conversation is quiet. Everyone is tired. Everyone is worried. Yet one thing still remains inside the Thompson household: hope. Hope that tomorrow will be different. Hope that work will return. Hope that life will improve. But as the family goes to bed that night, they do not realize that the worst years of the Great Depression are still ahead. The hardships of 1930 are only the beginning. For millions of Americans, survival itself is about to become the greatest challenge of their lives, to be continued. Why You Wouldn't Survive a Day During the Great Depression, Part 2. The next morning arrives with a cold gray sky hanging over Cleveland, Ohio. Inside the Thompson home, breakfast is smaller than ever. A few boiled potatoes and thin slices of bread sit on the table. The children eat quietly, knowing there isn't any extra food. John watches his family in silence. Only a year ago, he had a steady job at the steel mill. He never imagined that providing a simple meal would become a daily struggle. After breakfast, he puts on his worn coat and heads out once again. The city has changed. Factories that once buzzed with activity now stand silent. Storefronts are empty. Businesses continue to close, and the number of unemployed workers grows every week. John hears that a construction company may be hiring laborers. When he arrives, he finds a massive crowd already waiting. Hundreds of men stand outside the gate. Some are former factory workers, some are carpenters, others are office clerks who have never done manual labor before. Everyone is desperate for work. Hours later, a foreman appears. He announces that only 5 workers are needed, 5 jobs, more than 300 applicants. Within minutes, the positions are filled. The rest of the crowd slowly walks away. John is among them. Another day, another rejection. Meanwhile, back at home, Margaret hears troubling news from a neighbor. People are rushing to local banks. Rumors are spreading that some banks may fail. At first, it sounds unbelievable. Banks are supposed to keep people's money safe, but these are difficult times. Businesses are collapsing, loans are unpaid, and many financial institutions are struggling to survive. That evening, Margaret tells John what she heard. The family has only a small amount of savings left, but it is all they have. The next morning, they decide to visit the bank. As they approach the building, they immediately notice something is wrong. A long line stretches down the street. Men and women wait nervously outside. Everyone wants to withdraw their money before it is too late. The Thompsons join the line. Hours pass. The crowd grows larger. Then suddenly the bank doors close. A bank employee steps outside and delivers terrible news. The bank has suspended operations. No withdrawals, no access to savings, no explanation. A stunned silence falls over the crowd. Some people begin crying. Others stand frozen in disbelief. Years of savings have disappeared behind locked doors. The Thompson family returns home in silence. The little money they had left is now out of reach. That night, dinner is painfully small. A thin vegetable soup, a few pieces of bread, nothing more. The children try not to complain, but hunger is becoming impossible to ignore. Across America, millions of families are facing the same reality. Jobs are disappearing, banks are failing, savings are vanishing. As winter approaches, life becomes even harder. One afternoon, John walks through downtown Cleveland and notices a line stretching around an entire city block. At first, he wonders what people are waiting for. Then he realizes it is a soup kitchen. Hundreds of people stand patiently in line for a free meal. Workers, veterans, business owners, families. The Great Depression has touched nearly everyone. John hesitates. Only a year ago, he earned his own living and provided for his family without assistance. Joining a charity line feels humiliating, but hunger leaves little room for pride. Slowly, he takes his place at the end of the line. The cold wind blows as he waits. An hour passes, then another. Finally, he reaches the front. A volunteer hands him a bowl of hot soup and a small loaf of bread. The meal is simple, but after days of worry and disappointment, it feels like a gift. More importantly, he can take the bread home. As darkness falls, John walks back through the quiet streets carrying the loaf carefully under his arm. When he opens the front door, the children immediately notice it. Their faces brighten. For the first time in days, smiles appear around the dinner table. The family shares the bread slowly, making every bite count. Outside, America continues to sink deeper into crisis. More businesses are closing. More families are losing their homes. More workers are joining unemployment lines, but inside the Thompson home, one thing remains: hope, a small, fragile hope that tomorrow might be better. And during the Great Depression, sometimes hope is the only thing people have left. To be continued. Why You Wouldn't Survive a Day. During the Great Depression, Part 3. Winter arrives early in Cleveland. By December 1930, the cold feels harsher than ever. Snow covers the streets, and icy winds sweep between the buildings. For families with steady incomes, winter is uncomfortable. For families like the Thompsons, it is becoming a battle for survival. Inside their small wooden house, John wakes before sunrise. The room is freezing. The family has very little coal left for heating. To save fuel, everyone sleeps under multiple blankets and wears extra layers of clothing indoors. Even then, the cold finds its way inside. John sits at the kitchen table while Margaret prepares breakfast. The meal is simple: a few pieces of bread and weak oatmeal made with more water than oats. The children eat quietly. No one complains anymore. Hunger and hardship have become part of daily life. After breakfast, John leaves the house once again. Despite months of searching, he refuses to stop looking for work. The city streets are covered with snow. As he walks downtown, he notices more people than ever standing on corners and outside factories. Every week, more workers lose their jobs. Many businesses that survived the first months of the Depression are now closing their doors. A small hardware store has shut down. A shoe repair shop is gone. Even restaurants are struggling to stay open. The economic crisis is spreading everywhere. That afternoon, John notices a crowd gathered near the city square. A local charity organization is distributing coats and blankets to families in need. The line stretches around the block. Some people have been waiting since dawn. Many children stand beside their parents, shivering in the cold. John joins the line. Hours later, he receives a used wool blanket and a winter coat that once belonged to someone else. It is worn and patched in several places, but it is warm. And during the Great Depression, warm is all that matters. Back at home, Margaret faces another difficult problem. The landlord has arrived. Rent is overdue. For months, the family has managed to make partial payments using their remaining savings, but now the money is gone. The landlord is not cruel, but he has bills of his own to pay. He warns Margaret that if the rent continues to go unpaid, the family may have to leave. The thought terrifies her. Losing a job is one thing. Losing a home is something else entirely. That evening, when John returns, Margaret tells him what happened. The room falls silent. The children pretend not to listen, but they hear every word. For the first time, John begins to wonder whether they might lose everything. Across America, thousands of families are already facing that reality. Unable to pay rent or mortgages, many people are being forced from their homes. Some move in with relatives, others live in overcrowded apartments. Many have nowhere to go at all. Makeshift communities built from scrap wood, cardboard, and metal sheets are appearing near major cities. People call them Hoovervilles. Entire families live there in tiny shelters, struggling to survive through the winter. A few days later, another snowstorm hits Cleveland. The winds howl through the streets. Temperatures drop even lower. Schools close. Businesses shut down early. The Thompson family spends the evening gathered around a small stove, trying to stay warm. Margaret reads an old storybook to the children. For a little while, the worries of the outside world seem to disappear. The children laugh, John smiles, and the house feels warmer than it has in weeks. Not because of the stove, but because they are together. Later that night, after the children fall asleep, John sits by the window looking out at the snow-covered street. The future remains uncertain. He still has no job. The rent is overdue. Food is running low, yet somehow he refuses to give up. Because every morning brings another chance, another possibility, another reason to keep going. Outside, the Great Depression continues to tighten its grip on America, but inside the Thompson home, determination still survives. And in times like these, determination can be just as important as food, money, or shelter. The hardest winter has only begun, and even greater challenges are waiting just ahead. To be continued. Why You Wouldn't Survive a Day. During the Great Depression, Part 4. January 1931 arrives with little sign of improvement. The snow still covers the streets of Cleveland, and the cold seems to reach deeper into every home. For the Thompson family, each day has become a careful balancing act between hope and survival. One morning, John wakes to find that the last pieces of coal have nearly run out. The small stove that keeps the family warm is burning weaker than ever. Margaret notices it too. If they cannot afford more fuel, the house will become dangerously cold, but fuel costs money, and money is something the family no longer has. After breakfast, John leaves once again to search for work. The routine has become familiar. Walk for miles, ask for jobs, receive rejection, repeat. Yet he continues because stopping would mean surrendering. As he passes through downtown Cleveland, he notices that the bread lines have grown even longer. What once stretched around a corner now extends for several blocks. Men, women, and children wait patiently in the freezing weather. Some hold empty bags, others carry small containers hoping to bring food home to their families. The line moves slowly. Nobody knows if there will be enough food for everyone. That afternoon, John hears about temporary work unloading freight from a train. The pay is small and the work will only last one day. Still, hundreds of unemployed men rush to apply. When John arrives, dozens of workers are already competing for the opportunity. For the first time in months, luck is on his side. He is selected. The job lasts only a few hours, but it feels like a victory. Heavy crates are unloaded from railroad cars and moved into a nearby warehouse. The work is exhausting. His hands ache. His back hurts. But by the end of the day, he has earned a few dollars. The money is not enough to solve the family's problems. Yet it means food can be purchased. It means a little coal can be bought. It means survival for another week. That evening, John returns home carrying a small sack of groceries, bread, potatoes, a little meat. The children stare at the food with excitement. For weeks, every meal has been smaller than the last. Tonight feels different. Margaret carefully prepares dinner while the children help set the table. The meal is simple, but it is the best one they have shared in months. For a short time, the worries of the depression seem far away. Laughter returns to the house. The children talk about school. Margaret smiles. Even John allows himself to feel hopeful. But outside the Thompson home, the crisis continues to grow. Across America, unemployment is rising rapidly. Factories remain closed. Banks continue to fail. Thousands of families are losing their homes every month. Newspaper headlines speak of record unemployment and growing poverty. The country is struggling, and no one knows when conditions will improve. A few days later, another challenge arrives. The school sends a notice home. Many students are coming to class hungry. Teachers have begun noticing children falling asleep during lessons because they have not eaten enough. Some local charities start organizing meal programs for students. For many children, the food they receive at school becomes the most important meal of the day. The Thompson children are fortunate enough to attend one of those schools. Margaret feels relieved knowing they will at least receive something warm to eat. As winter continues, the family learns an important lesson. Survival during the Great Depression is not only about money, it is about community. Neighbors share what little they have. Churches distribute food, charities provide clothing, families help one another whenever possible. Without that support, many people would not survive. One snowy evening, John helps an elderly neighbor carry firewood into her home. She thanks him and offers a small basket of vegetables in return. Neither has much, yet both are willing to share. That simple act of kindness reminds John that even during the hardest times, people can still look after one another. As he walks home through the falling snow, he realizes something. The depression has taken jobs, it has taken savings, it has taken comfort and security. But it has not taken everything. People still have courage, people still have compassion, and sometimes those things are just as valuable as money. The winter of 1931 is far from over. More hardships are waiting. More challenges lie ahead. But for tonight, the Thompson family has a warm meal, a little coal in the stove, and hope for tomorrow. And during the Great Depression, that is more than many families can say. To be continued, Why You Wouldn't Survive a Day. During the Great Depression, Part 5. By the spring of 1931, the worst of the winter had passed, but life for the Thompson family was far from easy. The snow had melted from the streets of Cleveland, revealing a city that seemed more troubled than ever. Every week, more businesses closed their doors, more workers lost their jobs, more families found themselves struggling to survive. One morning, John left home before sunrise as usual. He still searched for work every day, even though months of disappointment had taught him not to expect much. Yet he knew he couldn't stop trying. As he walked through the city, he noticed something new. Large groups of men were gathering in public parks and open spaces. Some sat quietly on benches. Others discussed job opportunities, shared news, or simply passed the time. Most had nowhere else to go. The factories that once employed thousands remained silent. The construction projects that had once filled the city had stopped. For many workers, unemployment had become a way of life. That afternoon, John heard about a factory on the other side of town that might be hiring a few temporary workers. Hope returned for the first time in weeks. He walked nearly 5 miles to get there. When he arrived, a long line already stretched outside the building. Hundreds of men stood waiting. Some had arrived before dawn. Others had traveled from nearby towns. Everyone wanted the same thing, a chance. Hours passed under the warm spring sun. Finally, a supervisor stepped outside. The crowd immediately grew quiet. Only 6 workers would be hired, 6 jobs, more than 400 applicants. The chances were almost impossible. John waited as names were called. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. His name was never called. Slowly, the crowd began to leave. Some men looked angry, others looked defeated. John simply lowered his head and started the long walk home. For a moment, he wondered if things would ever improve. Meanwhile, Margaret was finding creative ways to stretch the family's limited resources. Behind their house was a small patch of unused land. With food prices becoming difficult to afford, she decided to start a garden. Using simple tools and seeds borrowed from a neighbor, she planted potatoes, carrots, beans, and cabbage. The children helped whenever they could. At first, the garden seemed too small to make a difference. But Margaret knew that every vegetable mattered. Every meal grown at home meant less money spent elsewhere. Across America, many families were doing the same thing. Small gardens appeared in backyards, empty lots, and community spaces. People were learning how to survive with whatever resources they had. Weeks passed. The first green shoots began pushing through the soil. The sight brought unexpected joy to the Thompson family. For the first time in months, they were creating something instead of losing something. One evening, as the family sat together on the front porch, the children watched the sunset while Margaret talked about the future. "What if things get better?" one child asked. Nobody answered immediately. The question felt almost strange. For so long, survival had been the only goal. Thinking about a better future felt unfamiliar. Finally, John smiled. "They will get better someday," he said. "I don't know when, but they will." The children seemed satisfied with that answer. Across the country, however, many families were losing hope. Bread lines continued growing. Charities struggled to keep up with demand. Homeless camps expanded near major cities. The Great Depression showed no signs of ending. Yet people continued moving forward. They planted gardens, they shared food, they helped neighbors. They found small reasons to keep believing in tomorrow. That night, after the children had gone to bed, John stepped outside. The city was quiet. The stars shone brightly overhead. For months, he had focused only on what his family had lost: the job, the savings, the security. But standing there in the cool spring air, he realized something important. They still had each other. They still had a home. They still had hope. The Depression had taken many things from them, but it had not taken their determination. And as long as that remained, they would continue fighting for a better future. The challenges ahead would be difficult. The country was still deep in crisis, but somewhere beyond the hardship, better days were waiting. The Thompson family simply had to survive long enough to see them, to be continued.